Dark Files with Detective James Miller. Good evening. I'm Detective James Miller with the State Bureau of Investigation. For 32 years, I've been documenting the cases that others refuse to touch. The ones that defy conventional explanation. The files you're about to see contain evidence of events that many would prefer to dismiss as mere folklore, or the product of overactive imaginations. Tonight, we examine one of the most persistent hauntings in the American Southwest, a case that has drawn me back repeatedly over my career, though the original incident occurred long before my time. Case file: Arizona 1902 CQH, date of initial report, June 15, 1902, status, unexplained. If you have a story, drop a comment below and subscribe to the channel. This is the case of the Copper Queen Hotel in Bisbee, Arizona, a once booming mining town nestled in the Mule Mountains, just miles from the Mexican border. Built in 1902 by the Phelps Dodge Mining Company, the Copper Queen was meant to be a symbol of sophistication in the rough and tumble world of frontier mining. But from its earliest days, something walked those halls that couldn't be explained by the rational world. The principal spirit that haunts the Copper Queen is believed to be a young woman named Julia Lowell, a prostitute who worked in the hotel during its early years. According to local records and newspaper clippings from the Bisbee Daily Review that I've examined, Julia fell deeply in love with one of her regular clients, a married mining executive. When she professed her feelings, he rejected her publicly, humiliating her in front of the hotel's staff and guests. On June 15, 1902, Julia Lowell was found dead in room 315. She had taken her own life, unable to bear the shame and heartbreak. The official coroner's report listed her death as suicide by hanging. But what's curious is how quickly the hotel management attempted to suppress the details of her death. Within days, all mentions of her name disappeared from local papers, replaced only by a small notice about maintenance work in the West Wing. What brings this case to our attention isn't the tragic death itself. Sadly, such endings were not uncommon in frontier towns. But what happened afterward, and continues to happen to this day. The first documented supernatural occurrence came just 3 weeks after Julia's death. On July 7, 1902, a mining engineer named Thomas Woodward was staying in room 315. His written account, preserved in the Bisbee Historical Society archives, describes what happened that night. I was awakened around 2:15 a.m. by what I initially thought was a chambermaid mistakenly entering my room. A figure of a woman in a red dress moved about the room, seemingly engaged in some kind of dance. When I called out, she turned toward me, and I observed her face to be contorted in profound sadness. Before I could speak again, she approached the foot of my bed, leaned forward as if to speak, then vanished entirely. I am not a man given to flights of fancy or spiritual beliefs, but I cannot explain what I witnessed in any rational manner. Woodward checked out the following morning and refused to ever stay at the hotel again, despite his business requiring regular visits to Bisbee. Hotel records show that between 1902 and 1910, room 315 was reported as problematic by guests no fewer than 27 times. The complaints ranged from unexplained cold spots to perfume scents that couldn't be removed from the linens, to the distinct sound of a woman crying. In 1911, the hotel manager attempted to address the situation by converting room 315 into a storage closet for nearly a decade. The incidents decreased but didn't stop entirely. Staff reported hearing dancing footsteps in the hallway outside the former room, particularly in the early morning hours. My personal investigation of this case began in 1992, when I was still a junior detective. The hotel had long since embraced its haunted reputation, becoming something of a paranormal tourist attraction. But what caught my attention was the report filed by Maria Sanchez, a maid who had worked at the hotel for over 15 years with no prior incidents. According to her statement dated May 10, 1992, I was changing linens in room 315 when the bathroom door, which I had left open, slammed shut. The temperature dropped so dramatically that I could see my breath. Then I heard a woman's voice whisper directly in my ear. He said he loved me. When I turned around, I saw what looked like a woman in a red dress reflected in the mirror. But when I turned back, no one was there. I have worked in this hotel too long to be frightened by the stories. But this was real. What makes Sanchez's account compelling is her lack of prior belief in the hotel's supernatural reputation. In my interview with her, which I conducted on May 18, 1992, she emphasized repeatedly that she had dismissed the ghost stories as tourist nonsense for years until her encounter. For the record, I found Ms. Sanchez to be an entirely credible witness. She had no history of mental illness, no substance abuse issues, and no apparent reason to fabricate her experience. Furthermore, she requested a transfer to daytime cleaning duties after the incident, taking a pay cut rather than continuing to work alone in the guest rooms during early morning hours. During my 1992 investigation, I was granted permission to spend 3 nights in room 315. The hotel management was surprisingly cooperative, perhaps seeing publicity value in an official investigation. I brought standard recording equipment, audio recorders, a thermal camera borrowed from the fire department, and a 35mm camera with infrared film. The first 2 nights were uneventful, though I noted significant temperature fluctuations that the building's antiquated heating system couldn't fully explain. On the 3rd night, May 21, 1992, at approximately 2:17 a.m., I recorded the following audio anomaly. Audio analysis performed by the Bureau's technical division could not definitively identify the source of this voice. It registers on a frequency slightly outside the normal human vocal range, and there were no other guests on that floor of the hotel that night. More significantly, at 2:22 a.m., my camera, which had been set to take photos at 15-minute intervals, activated independently and captured this image. The technical division's analysis confirmed no evidence of tampering or double exposure. The spectral anomaly visible in the upper right quadrant of the image could not be explained by lens flare or other known photographic phenomena. I felt nothing subjectively supernatural during my stay, though I did experience a persistent sense of being watched, particularly when in the bathroom. The room's mirror seemed to be a focal point of activity, which aligns with multiple witness statements over the decades. I returned to the Copper Queen Hotel in 2008 as part of a broader investigation into historical hauntings across the Southwest. By this time, room 315 had become known explicitly as Julia's room, with the hotel actually promoting its haunted status. I was concerned that this commercialization might contaminate witness accounts, as guests now arrived with preconceived expectations of paranormal experiences. Nevertheless, I conducted interviews with 17 individuals who reported encounters between 2000 and 2008. Filtering out accounts that seemed influenced by prior knowledge of the haunting, 3 cases stood out as particularly credible. The first involved a Phoenix attorney named Robert Caldwell, who stayed at the hotel for a mining rights case in 2003. Caldwell, a self-professed skeptic, requested room 315 specifically because it was the only room available on short notice. According to his written statement, around 3 a.m., I awoke to what sounded like a woman crying. Thinking it was coming from an adjacent room, I was prepared to call the front desk to complain, when I realized the sound was actually coming from inside my bathroom. When I turned on the light to investigate, the crying stopped, but the mirror had fogged over completely, despite the bathroom being cold to the touch. Written in the condensation was what appeared to be the letter J. Caldwell took a photograph of the mirror with his early model digital camera, which I've had analyzed. While the image quality is poor, there does appear to be a marking consistent with his description that cannot be explained by natural condensation patterns. The second case involved newlyweds Daniel and Sarah Moskowitz in 2006, who were unaware of the room's history when they checked in. They reported waking simultaneously at 2:14 a.m. to find what they described as a woman in old-fashioned red clothing standing at the foot of their bed. When Daniel reached for the light switch, the figure reportedly said, "He will never love you as I loved him," before disappearing. What makes their testimony compelling is the consistency of their accounts when interviewed separately, and the fact that they cut their honeymoon short to leave the hotel immediately after the incident. The third case occurred in 2007 and involved hotel maintenance worker Eduardo Vega, who was called to room 315 to fix a persistent plumbing issue. While working alone in the bathroom, Vega reported that the water in the sink turned on by itself. When he looked up, he saw in the mirror the reflection of a woman in a red dress standing behind him, though he was alone in the room. When he turned around, no one was there. But when he looked back at the mirror, the figure remained visible for several seconds before fading. Vega had worked at the hotel for 11 years and was aware of the legends, but had never experienced anything unusual before. His statement is particularly valuable because he was not a paying guest seeking a paranormal experience, but rather an employee simply doing his job. During my 2008 investigation, I employed more sophisticated equipment, including electromagnetic field detectors, digital audio recorders, and infrared cameras. Over 4 nights in room 315, I documented 7 distinct anomalies. 1. 3 instances of significant temperature drops between 10-15 degrees Fahrenheit that could not be attributed to the HVAC system. 2. EMF spikes occurring between 2 a.m. and 2:30 a.m. each night. 3. Audio recordings capturing what sound like footsteps when no one was walking in the room. A perfume scent, described by witnesses as rosewater, that appeared and disappeared without source. 5. 1 instance of water faucets turning on in the bathroom while I was sitting in the main room. 6. Battery drainage in all electronic equipment that exceeded normal rates. 7. A single EVP, electronic voice phenomenon, capturing what sounds like a female voice saying what audio specialists have interpreted as either "love me" or "leave me." In my professional capacity as an investigator, I remain committed to finding rational explanations for seemingly supernatural phenomena. However, the consistency of experiences across more than a century, the credibility of many witnesses, and the physical evidence documented presents a compelling case that something beyond our current scientific understanding continues to occur in room 315 of the Copper Queen Hotel. My most recent visit to the Copper Queen was in 2019, shortly before the pandemic temporarily shut down most paranormal investigations. The hotel had by this time fully embraced its haunted reputation, with guided ghost tours and a guest book specifically for visitors to record their supernatural experiences. Despite this commercialization, I was struck by a pattern that has remained consistent across the decades. The phenomena center primarily around the mirror in room 315, occur most frequently between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m., and often involve the color red and feelings of profound sadness or rejection. During this visit, I interviewed current and former staff members rather than guests, seeking accounts from those who had long-term exposure to the building. Night manager Elaine Wilkins, who had worked at the hotel for 22 years, provided this account. "We've had so many incidents that I've lost count, but what stands out is the consistency. Guests who know nothing about Julia will report seeing a woman in red dancing in their room or in the hallway outside 315. Maintenance workers refuse to go into that room alone after midnight. Several times a year, despite having electronic locks, we find room 315's door standing wide open in the morning when it was securely locked the night before. The most unsettling pattern is that male guests who stay in the room alone report feeling someone sit on their bed or caress their face while they're trying to sleep. Women rarely report physical contact, just sightings or emotional impressions of sadness. Historical research I conducted at the Bisbee Mining Museum archives in 2019 revealed additional context that may explain Julia Lowell's continued presence. According to employment records from the Phelps Dodge Company, an executive named James Westfield was stationed in Bisbee from 1900 to 1904, during which time he maintained a permanent room at the Copper Queen, while his family remained in Boston. Westfield left Bisbee suddenly in June 1902, the same month as Julia's suicide, with company records citing only personal matters requiring immediate attention. A local newspaper social column from May 1902 mentions Westfield being seen frequently in the company of a lady friend at hotel social functions, though no name is given. This circumstantial evidence aligns with the hotel staff's oral history about Julia's unrequited love for a married mining executive. What's particularly interesting is that room 315 was specifically designated in hotel records as a residence room, rather than a standard guest room during the 1900-1904 period. The hotel layout from that era shows it would have had a private entrance via an exterior staircase that has since been removed, a convenient arrangement for a married man conducting an affair. In evaluating all the evidence collected over my 3 decades of investigating this case, I find myself at the intersection of history, psychology, and phenomena that defy conventional explanation. The Copper Queen Hotel case represents one of the most well-documented and persistent hauntings in American history, with a clear historical trigger event and consistent manifestation patterns across more than a century of reports. While many ghost stories fade or evolve dramatically over time, the core elements of Julia Lowell's haunting have remained remarkably stable. The red dress, the dancing, the expressions of heartbreak, the focus on the mirror, and the consistent timing of experiences. This stability suggests either an extraordinary persistence in local folklore, or, as the evidence increasingly suggests, a genuine residual haunting tied to strong emotional trauma. The scientific instruments we've used over the years have documented physical anomalies that correlate with reported experiences, temperature fluctuations, electromagnetic disturbances, and audio phenomena that defy conventional explanation. While none of this constitutes absolute proof of the supernatural, it does present a body of evidence that something extraordinary continues to occur within the walls of the Copper Queen Hotel. Personal notes. After 32 years investigating cases like the Copper Queen, I find myself increasingly open to possibilities that extend beyond our current scientific framework. While I maintain professional skepticism in my official capacity, the weight of evidence in this and similar cases suggests that emotional trauma can sometimes imprint itself on physical locations in ways we don't yet fully understand. Julia Lowell's story is, at its core, a human tragedy. A woman so devastated by rejection that she took her own life. and whose emotional pain seems to have somehow transcended death itself. If there is any purpose to her continued manifestation, it may be simply to be acknowledged, to have her story remembered when the men who controlled the narrative of her time tried to erase her entirely. What troubles me most about this case is not the supernatural elements, but how Julia's humanity was dismissed both in life and death. Perhaps what we call a haunting is sometimes just the echoes of those who were never properly heard in life, still trying to tell their stories long after their physical voices have been silenced. Evidence log. Original Coroner's Report, June 16, 1902. Bisbee Daily Review. Newspaper Articles, 1902. Thomas Woodward Written Account, July 1902. Hotel Registry and Complaint Records, 1902-1910. Maria Sanchez Statement and Interview Recording, 1992. Room 315, Thermal Anomaly Photographs, 1992, 2008, 2019. EVP recordings from 3 separate investigations. Witness statements from Caldwell, Moskowitz couple, and Vega. Phelps Dodge employment records for James Westfield. Original hotel architectural plans showing room 315's former private entrance. Digital photographs of mirror condensation phenomenon, 2003. Electromagnetic field readings from 2008 and 2019. Investigations case status update. This case remains classified as unexplained. The persistent and consistent nature of reported phenomena over more than a century, corroborated by multiple credible witnesses and physical evidence, suggests something beyond conventional explanation continues to occur at the Copper Queen Hotel. While commercial exploitation of the hotel's haunted reputation has likely contaminated some recent accounts, the core phenomena documented in this file cannot be fully explained by any known psychological or environmental factors, recommended for continued monitoring and periodic reinvestigation. Some cases never truly close. The story of Julia Lowell in the Copper Queen Hotel reminds us that history doesn't always rest quietly. Sometimes it continues to dance in the darkened hallways of places where great emotion once lived. Until next time, I'm Detective James Miller. Remember, not all mysteries have simple explanations, and sometimes the most haunting questions are the ones that remain unanswered.